If you wait 10 years to start investing, you could lose more than $200,000 without realizing it. Not because you picked bad investments, not because the market crashed, but because of one simple decision almost everyone makes in their 20s. They wait until they have more money first. But in investing, waiting is often the most expensive mistake you can make. And once you see the math behind this, you'll never look at time the same way again. Because the stock market has a strange rule. It doesn't reward the people who start with the most money, it rewards the people who start earlier than everyone else. In fact, some of the best long-term investors didn't start with big portfolios. They started with something much smaller, sometimes just a few dollars. And once you understand why that works, investing from zero suddenly looks very different. I spend a lot of time studying how ordinary people build investments from almost nothing. Not hedge funds, not millionaires, just normal people with normal incomes. And one pattern shows up again and again. The biggest obstacle to investing usually isn't money. It's a story people repeat to themselves. A story that sounds completely reasonable, logical even. It usually goes like this: I'll start investing once I have more money. But hidden inside that sentence is a trap that quietly keeps millions of people on the sidelines for years. Most people imagine investing like a door, and the door only opens once you have enough money. $5,000, $10,000, maybe more. Until then, they're standing outside, waiting for the moment when investing finally becomes worth it. But the market doesn't work like a door. It works more like one of those moving walkways in an airport. The earlier you step on, the further it carries you, even if you move slowly. But if you stay off completely, you have to walk the entire distance alone. And the longer you wait, the harder it becomes to catch up. Because investing has a hidden engine behind it: time. And waiting just 5 extra years can cut your final portfolio by tens of thousands of dollars. Waiting 10 years can cut it by hundreds of thousands. Because time is actually the most powerful force in investing. Much more powerful than most people realize. In fact, it can completely change the outcome of 2 investors who save the exact same amount of money. Imagine 2 investors, Sarah and Mark. Sarah starts investing $100 per month at age 25. Mark waits. He decides he'll start later once he earns more money. So Mark begins at age 35. But Mark invests double the amount, $200 per month. So logically, Mark should end up with more money, right? But something surprising happens. Assuming an average market return of about 7% per year after inflation, the results look very different. By retirement at age 65, Sarah ends up with roughly $300,000. Mark ends up with about $245,000. Even though Mark invested twice as much every month. In fact, Mark actually contributes $96,000 more in total, and still ends up with less money. Why? Because Sarah gave her investment something Mark didn't: 10 extra years. And those 10 years allow compounding to do something remarkable. In the early years of investing, most of the money in your account is money you personally contributed. But over time, the balance begins to change. Eventually, the market starts contributing more money than you do, and that's when investing starts to feel completely different. Because your money is no longer just sitting there. It's working, quietly, in the background, even while you sleep, even while you work, even while you're doing absolutely nothing. The strange thing about compounding is that it works silently for years, before it suddenly becomes impossible to ignore. But this still leaves a very obvious question. What happens if someone truly has almost nothing to invest? $10, $20, maybe even less. This is where things start to get interesting. When someone invests for the first time, even with very small amounts, something subtle begins to change in their mind. They stop seeing money purely as spending power and start seeing it as future leverage. Every dollar suddenly has 2 identities, one version that disappears today and another version that quietly grows tomorrow. Psychologists call this future orientation. People who regularly think about their future self tend to make very different financial decisions. Not because they're smarter, but because they see consequences more clearly. They begin asking a different question. And that single shift in thinking changes everything. Let me show you what this looked like for someone named Daniel. Daniel had a normal office job. For years, he believed investing was something people with money did, not people like him. Every month, his paycheck arrived. Bills, groceries, random spending. One evening, he opened his banking app and noticed something frustrating. His balance looked almost identical to what it looked like 6 months earlier. Same income, same habits, same result. So Daniel tried something small, almost laughably small. $20, automatically invested every week. At first, it felt pointless. $20 didn't feel like investing, it felt like a drop of water in the ocean. But after a few months, something strange started happening. Daniel began paying attention to money differently. Spending $10 suddenly meant something new, because he started thinking, that could have been half an investment. About $1,200 invested. Not life-changing money, but that wasn't the important part. The important part was the realization he had. For the first time in his life, money wasn't just passing through his account. It was staying, growing, building something. And that psychological shift is where most investing journeys truly begin. Most people's financial flow looks like this: income to bills to spending to maybe saving. And investing, if it happens at all, is whatever survives at the end. But the problem is, there's usually nothing left. So investors reverse the sequence: income to investing to bills to spending. Even if the investment is tiny, $10, $20, $50, because the habit matters far more than the amount. And this single change turns investing from something you try to do into something that happens automatically every month. Once that sequence changes, momentum begins building. Imagine opening your investment account 20 years from now, seeing a number that once felt impossible, and realizing something simple. It didn't happen because you made one perfect investment. It happened because you started earlier than most people do. Small decisions, repeated consistently, year after year. Investing from zero isn't about speed, it's about direction. A plane that changes its course by just a few degrees ends up in a completely different country a few hours later. Money works the same way. Small, consistent actions create dramatically different outcomes over time. And the most important step in investing isn't having a lot of money. It's stepping onto the runway before most people even realize the journey has already started.